Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would go over the changelogs of the last few days when it comes to what's been going on in War Thunder. A lot of people have been asking me my opinions on what I think of the MiG-29, the F-16, the F-14, the current metas that are at the top tier of aviation right now. But generally, the issue with looking at the top tier is it's been constantly changed since the release of the new sets of vehicles, so it's kind of hard to look at stuff kind of from a point of view which is, I suppose, more standard, because if stuff constantly changes, then if you start making videos on certain things and then you put out a bunch of opinions on them, and then the next day it just completely changes, that video is now completely useless. So over the last few days, since the update has come out, there's been like 3 or 4 different changelogs, which has all modified a lot of these vehicles from the highest echelon of the game, and therefore it just makes everything said beforehand completely useless. And it is kind of annoying, at least from a content point of view, because you can put out a bunch of opinions on things, and then literally in 2 or 3 days, it is completely wrong. So that's why I haven't really been talking about them too much, and I haven't been talking about the effect of the new aircraft, because they're just not settled in the game yet, and they just constantly keep getting maneuvered. Anyway, we'll go through the next 2 changelogs and see what is going on. So the first changelog was 2.23.0.38, and this was a general it's fixed, so they talked about a few things that they did fix in it. The ground vehicles portion, a bug has been fixed that prevents the SPAAG lead markers at distances over 3.5 kilometers while locking onto targets. So this will be useful for AAs which have a little bit of an extended distance that they can engage over, but obviously wouldn't affect too many SPAAGs. I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to SPAAs especially, shoot at targets way too far out compared to where they should be attacking them. Usually I only open up on targets, which if I have a good AA, from about 1.5 to 2 out at most, unless I'm using a Sergeant York or engaging a helicopter which isn't moving. Usually if you engage further than that, then it's very easy for the plane to see you and then kind of move and sorts, and so you can miss, and then they know where you are, so therefore it's easy for them to, hunt you. There was also a bug fix that enabled the lead marker on SPAGs without cannons, which obviously is kind of pointless because of the fact that you can't lead a target without guns. I suppose you could lead a target with the missile to try and hit it as it comes in, but then obviously the lead marker wasn't set up for it. There was also a bug fix that allowed knocked out crew members to use the NVDs, rangefinders, and IR searchlights, and engine control, which is quite funny, and they also fixed something on the Puma. There was a bug which was fixed where the heat rounds in the protection analysis arrived at the wrong angles, which is kind of interesting. One of the things to also note about the Puma is since it got the buff where it can get the lead marker, I played it a little bit, and it's such an insanely good vehicle, even now at its BR. I feel like when I chat to people and they tell me how it's been over BR'd now and how it's completely useless, I don't know where they're coming from. The vehicle itself is still massively super survivable, it's really fast, it's an amazing active aggressive scout. It's just a nuts vehicle to play, so I still think it's in a very good place. There was also a bug fix that allowed vehicle control after the nuclear blast by switching to the aircraft gunner's camera or binoculars of ground vehicles. So obviously the issue with this is that TikTokers are going to find it harder to be able to show their nuclear blasts, but that's really about it. Obviously, it was one of those bugs that didn't really affect anybody, but at the same time could, I suppose, hurt people's eyes. So that could be a bit of an issue. The Strela 10M2, a bug has been fixed that prevents active scouting mechanic in battle. So the Strela now has active scouting since it can't really engage ground units. I wish there was a few other vehicles that got scouting. There is a machine, one of the bills for Sweden, where it is just a box with a very small autocannon and a Bill missile, which is similar to the TOW-2B, I believe that machine should get scouting if a lot of other light vehicles do get them. It's an issue with it being labeled a tank destroyer, and since the tank destroyers usually don't get those mechanics, but still I believe it should get scouting to give it a bit more oomph, especially since you have so many good light tank options for good old Sweden out there. It's very hard to say that, you should play that thing. They also disabled vehicle hit indicators caused by the forward guns on aircraft, nearby explosions, and also fire in a player's vehicle as well. For aircraft, they added the SAS mode for the A6E tram. Now, the SAS mode is kind of interesting, but it's something that most players probably won't actually use. Basically, SAS, as an idea, it's something that's only really available for simulator guys. You have to use it in full real controls, and it's one of those ways that your vehicle is kind of controlled. The SAS means the Stability Augmentation System, and there is obviously a key binding for it, but you only really use it when it comes to simulator. It just means that it controls slightly differently. There's a few other settings which you can go through when it comes to the control of the vehicle. But if you want to have a look more about it, I think there's a wiki article on it. Generally, it's not a bad mode. It's just not very useful in anything apart from in sim. And even in sim, it's just one of the ways to, control your aircraft a little bit differently. The F-16A Block 20 MLU got a drag chute, so it'll be easier to land. Very nice to see. And the F-16A, the older versions, their max speed has been increased by 9 kilometers. The max speed at 9 kilometers altitude has been increased. So if you ever go to that height, then I suppose you're a little bit nippier. The Mirage 2000s, the max IAS speed has been increased to 1,440 kilometers an hour. So a little bit of a buff for those guys. And this is the big one. The MiG-23, MiG-29, F-16, J-37, Mirage F-1. For the radar pulse Doppler track mode, the notch sector has been reduced. So if the target is lost, the radar maintains inertial tracking longer. So it's going to be even harder to be able to dodge these missiles coming into you, which is already a pain. The highest echelon right now is incredibly hard for people who are stock grinding vehicles. I would actually say nowadays, when it comes to stock grinds, it's probably easier to grind in ground than it is in aviation. And what I mean by that is ground vehicles. At least you have a chance of doing some kind of damage to the enemies. Nowadays, if you're in a stock vehicle at the high echelons, and especially if it's a weak stock vehicle compared to some of the boomers that are out there, it's so hard to grind out. They really need to have a look at the way that the modifications work and start doing a system where they've kind of done with missiles. So instead of flat out you don't have it, and then once you get the modification you do have it, what they need to do is half-seas. So I've talked about this in the past with a lot of modifications, especially with ground. With aviation, I'll give you an example. So if you have, let's say, the countermeasures modification, what they could do is they could say, okay, if you don't have the counters modification, you get a third of the countermeasures that the plane is supposed to have, and then once you unlock the countermeasures modification, then you get all the countermeasures that it's supposed to have. So therefore, in a stock setup, you still have the ability to use countermeasures, so it's a little bit easier for you, and also you still get a bonus if you upgrade the modification. So instead of getting, like, let's say, the 60 countermeasures with the modification, instead beforehand you would have 20, and then once you get the modification you would have the total of 60. Stuff like that has to be looked at right now, because if you are especially like a free-to-play player, or if even you are a premium time player and you are going into stock grind these vehicles, it is pretty much impossible to do so without getting jumped by these crazy radars, these crazy machines, and the crazy missiles. On top of this, the R-23R, 24R, 27R, the AIM-7, the Skyflash, and the RB-71 missiles, so basically all the semi-active radar homing ones, the velocity search acquisition zone has been reduced. This adjustment decreases the chance of acquiring another target, although it decreases the chance of locking onto the selected target if the target greatly changes its speed or direction within the period between a missile launch and the target acquisition. One of the things that's been noted over the last week is a lot of people have been locking onto targets, firing their semi-active radar homing missiles, and then the radar homing missiles have just naffed off and hit another target which is kind of in the periphery of the target that they've locked. So they have done this. It doesn't say it's a bug that they've fixed, so this is probably just a balance thing, or they're just sick of people team killing others because they're not properly actually looking at where they're firing their missiles. So yeah, kind of interesting. Also, for all fighter radars, the range gate for BVR acquisition has been increased to avoid failed acquisition attempts if the target closing speed is high. This is something that I noticed like earlier this year when I was using the F-14. It was very annoying at certain speeds and also certain altitudes. You would constantly drop targets above a certain distance, and then once it hit a certain distance, you just never lost lock. So it's nice to see that they've increased that just to make that a bit more standard. The Mirage 2000 R1, a bug has also been fixed that caused a speed boost while mounting some weapon presets. The aircraft type has been changed to a strike aircraft, so maybe it'll be easier to spawn in. At least in aerialistic, it doesn't make a difference for it because it is a high rank vehicle, above rank 5, so therefore it doesn't get the air spawn. The J7D, the SL reward in realistic battles has been increased. The repair cost has been reduced to 5400 SL. It was a little bit odd that the rewards for the J7D were lower than a lot of other vehicles. I'm guessing that was just a fault. But the J7D is looking quite nice, so hopefully people are enjoying it. There was also a bug fix that caused suspended fuel tank detachments while toggling from a ship to aircraft in a hangar, which is interesting. And also the Harrier GR7, a missing critical overload indication, has been restored, so no real difference to it there. There was also a bug fix that enabled the stabilizer while switching to the optical tracking camera, and the INS of the R-24R and R-27R/ER missiles now works as it should. When contact with the target is lost, the missile will continue steering on a predicted target position. So even if the target is lost, the missiles will not stop coming. Also, the data link will continue working for the R-27ER and also R missiles after target reacquisition by fighter radar, allowing missile to track target maneuvers and reacquire it. So those missiles really do know where they are, and they also really do know where they aren't. So do you see what I mean about talking about these higher echelon vehicles and working out, which ones are better and which ones are worse? Even just in this changelog here, you have multiple changes to multiple high-tier vehicles which are going to affect the meta and how they work. So even just from this update, which was on the 28th of December, anything before it can kind of just be disregarded, which is why I'm really not, in the mood of making videos on these vehicles, because they're just getting constantly updated. In Naval, the USS Arizona and Wyoming, the fuse delay of AP rounds on the auxiliary guns has been adjusted to 0.015 seconds, so we'll have to see how that affects the amount of damage they do. The Miyoko, the firing angles of the main caliber turrets have been adjusted, so the third turret doesn't shoot through the superstructure anymore. The ship's class on the info card has also been corrected, so that's nice. And also the Agano, the targeting angles of the main caliber turrets have also been increased, so it'll be easier to get the guns on. There was also a bug that caused the mission results window to show an erroneous message about not receiving a reward for an activity if the connection to the server was lost. Has been fixed, so that's kind of a bit of an odd one. Also for sound, the volume of enemy vehicles in the rear hemisphere has been increased. I actually noticed this when it comes to aviation specifically. This is a good change. It means that people who are not, looking 360 constantly, which, you should be, especially when it comes to air, it means that you can hear people who are near you from behind and therefore react a little bit better to them. So that is a positive change. The sound of the automatic weapons for ground vehicles and naval vessels has also been improved. The sound has become more sharp and distinctive at distance, and the volume of the breeches of the player's guns has become louder. I generally thought they were okay beforehand, but we'll have to see how this affects it. I haven't really noticed that so far, but I have kind of just been very much metagaming to get the events done because I've had limited time over the last few days. The sounds of rockets and missiles passing by have also become more distinctive and bright, so in a 2-kilometer area around the player, so you'll be able to see them better. I wish they did this with some SPAs. Some SPAs just have completely invisible tracers or invisible rounds now. So as a person who is flying cast, it's very hard to keep track of what's shooting at you. Also, the ship crew voice chat, the frequency of the following sound reports has been reduced: position of the rudder, incoming hits, orders to initiate a damage control, incoming damage reports, and also healing reports. So this is the second change they've done to the ship crew voice chat, and I think they're going to have to do another one because the crew is still chatting. They're constantly chatting about things, so they still need to tone it down a little bit. The graphics portion, a bug was fixed where hit decals might be displayed incorrectly, armor penetration marks might be displayed on aircraft, and aircraft skin damage might be displayed on ground vehicles. So this was happening quite a lot with aviation. This was actually happening before the major update came out, so it's nice to see that they fixed this one, because it looked like you'd taken damage, but you hadn't actually taken damage. There was also a bug fixed where hit decals might twinkle when turning the camera, and also a bug that might change the size of the 10th anniversary decoration has been fixed. Basically, it would just be an absolutely massive decoration wandering around. They also changed some interface stuff as well. This was really a big end-of-the-year patch. So non-purchase ships and boats now have access to torpedoes in test sail. This is a positive change. It's nice to see that. It means that you'll be able to use the torpedoes and understand how they go. Also, reward notifications for actions have been added to simulator battles, such as a hit to enemy vehicles, capturing of a point, etc. This allows the player to track the helpful actions reward in each period of the time and be aware of period, end, and start. These notifications could be hidden in the battle interface section of the options menu by unchecking the box Show Reward Message for an action in the battle interface section of the options menu. Are now able to hide HUD elements in battle chat, log of the destroyed vehicles, orders panel, reward notifications for actions, and also battle reward notifications. So you can pretty much track how much you're getting in Simulator, which I think is good. Also, at the same time, the display of the player icon with the Chinese female pilot has been fixed. They basically changed the insignia, which is on the plane, so made it actually more PLA. The vehicle itself in that pic, I think, wasn't it a J-15 or something like that? A lot of people going on about it. But I mean, it's a decal. It's a profile picture. Like, I wouldn't read too much into it. We have some profile pictures in the game which have a bunch of other stuff in it as well. There was also an error in the text of the pinup Pilot Japan decal has been fixed. It probably said Weebs away or something. And then also for missions, there was a bug fixed where aircraft might appear under the airfield textures in the Finland and Ash River locations. So luckily they've fixed the airfields too. You can see here it's just a massive update at the end of the year, fixing a bunch of things, changing a bunch of things, and therefore, as I said, anything that could be said beforehand kind of just gets thrown out. There was also another changelog today, the 2.23.0.42, which once again changed a lot of the higher echelon missiles. The R-23T, the 24T, and also the 27T missiles. The dominance of heat signatures for jet engines and flares in the missile seekers has been adjusted. So we'll have to see how that's been adjusted. It'll probably be in the data mines. I'll cover the data mines in the new year. I've kind of been leaving the data mines to one side for a while, just because of the fact that there's been so many little incremental changes for a lot of these vehicles, and I was just waiting for that to kind of stop, so then we could go over all of them, because at the moment, there's just so much stuff going on with them. Also, the J35XS, the ammo capacity of the forward-firing cannon has been increased to 120 rounds, I've seen a few excesses in the game. They seem to be doing pretty well. I've seen a lot of people be down on them though, so I don't really know why. I feel like the J35, but with countermeasures, is quite a potent machine. So I would have to see a few more opinions on that thing. And then also in Naval, the missing detonation in the shell and charge cellars of naval vessels has also been fixed. So another good bug fix. I hope the Winter Quest event has been going well for you. Obviously, remember the sales are going on right now. And also at the same time, if I don't catch you beforehand, I hope you guys have a really good new year. Hopefully this year will be better than the last, and so on and so forth. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Forge, Siegebreak, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, and also Sem Arslan, Wilkski, Uncle Bean, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.